in 5 years' time, it will be odd if you can't just stream your income when you want. It will. Paydays will be gone. The only question is who's going to be the market leader.
Hello, we are joined today by Peter Briffett, who is the founder of Wagestream. Peter, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
On this miserable day.
It's a beautiful day of snow.
Yeah, London at its finest. You've had quite an entrepreneurial background, so we do want to cover a lot of distance before we get to Wagestream, because I think there's some really great stories to unpack from that.
All my failures.
Well, it says here you've got a Guinness World Record, so we definitely want to dig into that.
I don't want to talk about that at all, but since you brought it up,
okay.
we've got half an hour to discuss it.
Well, we thought we could start roughly about the time you were sort of founding Ivy Media and selling that to Microsoft, and then maybe go on from there, and then maybe give a good portion to the Guinness World Record if you so choose.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We must discuss the Guinness World Record. I've always been sort of in high growth startups. I guess one of my first successful ventures was iView, which was basically it's like a visual database, so you could throw any sort of file format in there. So this is in the days of sort of Flickr, when visual databases or photography tools were cool and hip, and actually people wanted to use them. And we ended up selling that to Microsoft as part of their Expression suite of products, and relocate the whole team over to Redmond. I've never gone through a sort of acquisition before, sort of a sale before. And it was a very small company, it's only about 35 people. So it's like me against 15 Microsoft lawyers, but it was a great learning experience. I don't know if I won in the end, I don't know what happened, but and either way, we actually ended up, getting everyone over to Redmond. They did a great job of relocating everyone, and then we went on. I ended up working for Microsoft for about 18 months, and we ended up having about the best post-acquisition metrics in Microsoft history, to the point where Bill Gates even emailed and said, "Wow, this is great."
Bill emailed you?
Yeah, because he couldn't believe, because normally once you acquire a company, revenue goes down, people are disengaged, and it's a horrible mess, and everyone regrets ever buying anything. But we actually we weren't allowed to, but we put the Microsoft brand on our box, because we were selling this photography sort of tool into retail, and they sort of said, no, you can't do that, it's going to take at least 6 months just to go through security checks, and sort of a brand bible a mile high. So they sort of flew and said, no, you can't do that. So then they flew away, and then we put it on there anyway, and sales just went through the roof, because obviously you've got Microsoft endorsement. I probably shouldn't say this on air, but thanks Microsoft, it was good. And a lot of people, it was a great product, a lot of people were happy, no one died, but at the end of the day, it was a really, really strong move that enabled us to sort of 10x our revenue overnight.
Well, and perhaps you were acting in the interest of shareholders.
I think that's exactly what I was doing, come to think of it. That's correct.
And what happened after that period of then working with Microsoft?
So then, it was just, I realised one thing that I've sort of taken to heart for the rest of my life, that, Microsoft's full of very intelligent people. They'd have never let me in normally. I'd never got recruited there normally through their normal protocol. I'd just been thrown out, probably the recruitment process. But it's very intelligent people, just can't do anything. They're just to, you can make a decision, but to see that in a product or in a service or whatever else, it just takes years and years of time. So for me personally, I just can't handle the lack of, movement in a big corporate that just doesn't enable you to move fast and break things and stuff like that. So it just made me realise in life that actually a startup or a new company should never be scared of the big companies, because they just will never move. It's like a big ship as opposed to a little speedboat. They're never going to move as fast as you. So, albeit when they do something, it just takes years and years of time. So I think it's just a good lesson to not worry about that type of thing, even though you can get crushed if you're a startup. Worrying about big companies doing something shouldn't be something you worry about.
And they're there to buy you at the end of it.
they may be there to buy you if you do something nice. Yeah.
Because Microsoft went through a bit of a dull patch. They seem to be on the up now again.
As soon as I left, revenue started coming in again, so it's fine. I'm kidding. No, it's a great company. They've got such a strong foundation base.
But their legacy is terrible. In all the products they still roll out, it's still rectangular boxes and just dated UX. But as you say, I think it's easy to moan about these things, but they've probably got users who are so familiar with the way that they do things.
Yeah, I know exactly. I don't think anyone's planning to get funding for a new Excel product. I think they're so ingrained in people's workday that they can afford a lot of failures and they'll still be there. But ultimately, it's a whole new set of principles to try and innovate at a company that size. It's tough, but they seem to be doing that now.
And then you were onto your next challenge.
Yes, then after that, I got involved with another company that was actually, I guess it was before the Fintech firm, the sort of phrase was even coined really, but that was a fixed income product we ended up selling to Thomson Reuters. So I ended up working for Thomson Reuters for a sort of similar period afterwards. But thank God we sold it literally just before, about a month before Lehman's collapse. So I'll never forget, I was sitting in Canary Wharf. We just sold our company, and just watching everyone come out the building, we were like, thank God, timing's everything in this game. Because the whole financial collapse happened about 4 weeks after we sold. So
that's unbelievable. You're the only person I know who's got a good story about that time. I know somebody who
benefited.
One of my brother's friends started working there for about 3 months and then lost his job. But I don't know anybody who got out.
Yeah, well, I just watched him go. We were just sitting there going, well, that was a lucky escape. But it also made me realise, sitting in a bank for the rest of my life is probably not something I'm going to be too keen on either. And then I got an opportunity to found sort of living, found is the wrong word, but start LivingSocial over here.
Can I ask you about that? Because I came across Aaron Battalion once when I was 26.
Yeah,
amazing. He's such a nice guy. And he was he founder of LivingSocial? No,
he was absolutely. He was one of the founders. There's 4 guys. He was one of them. He was more like on the tech side. He was a great guy, Aaron. I still follow him on Twitter and LinkedIn. He's a good guy.
Really funny, really bright.
Yeah, no, he's smart as hell.
But you kicked it off.
Yeah, so I started over here. So I got a call from an investor, a firm called Growtech in the US, and they rang me up and said, look, they should have heard anything about group buying or LivingSocial or even Groupon at the time. They said, look, something's going on over here. You've got to come and check it out. It's amazing. So I went over there to DC, met Tim, who was one of the CEO and founder, one of the founding team. And the metrics were just great. Like they knew they were onto something. And Steve Case had just put money in from Revolution. And he was like, look, this ex-AOL founder, he just said, look, these things come along once in a generation. Put your foot down and put it down hard. This is like, you just got to execute. So they just were like, it was just a land grab. So they said, look, be our first international employee. So I flew back over here, started at LivingSocial up in a little basement in Oxford Circus. I was sort of in the shared office next to a load of guys selling iron ore and tin into China. So I was trying to talk to London Zoo under the desk and do a deal on a discount. But yeah, got the first deals going, then grew that, and that went to like 350 people, 100 million P&L in about 18-month period. So it was
18 months.
So it was a crazy growth. Like, it was one of those, you spend $1 and $5 comes back. So what are you going to do? You're going to spend a lot more dollars and a lot more money comes back. No one worried about retention in those days or whatever else. It was just like, consumers were the conversion was crazy. That Groupon and ourselves were getting to the point where, we're the fastest growing company on earth for that 2010 to 2012 period. And it was just, defined by the quality of your content. So you had to go and get a deal that made sense. So I know all sorts of nuances about, 6 leg waxes as opposed to 1 at this price at that location is going to get you 30 more grand than a leg wax. So all this sort of nonsense that you shouldn't really know. But I ended up knowing, so it was very analytical business. You could get down to a burger at that price in that location is going to make you £40,000 more pounds than in that, that type of thing. So it's interesting.
Where are those businesses today? Because
flatlining.
Flatlining.
Really? I mean, there's still Groupon's still a big beast, and it's still a business, and it's profitable with a low margin. But the issue with all those businesses, I mean, after they went through the Healy growth stage, was retention. Like if I've given you 5 restaurant vouchers and I send you a 6th one via email, and you haven't used the other 5, it's like, well, is that something you're going to want to do? Whereas in the early days, everyone was just buying. It's just crazy that people had never seen this type of pricing before, and therefore the conversion was great. But over time, the retention of users was the big issue and still is the issue with those businesses. Like user acquisition was, no one had ever seen anything like it, but retention was the problem. So I mean, that learning a lot of lessons around that stuff was quite interesting as well. Because at the end of the day, any business has to be able to acquire and retain, otherwise you haven't got a business.
One question: how do you employ that many people that quickly, and do you even optimize for talent, or do you just need people to deliver?
So someone came up, and this was part of, and in fact, probably I remember speaking to Aaron, probably one of the initiators of this. We had this concept of super session. So in order to get this type of content, which is these great deals, you had to have people on the ground. There's no way you could phone up a restaurant owner and then do this. You really had to be face to face. That's what at least was our model. So we had this concept of super session. So we'd get like 100 candidates into a hotel, I'd say to instead of people constantly being interviewed throughout weeks and months, we'd say to the management team, right, everyone needs to be here on this Tuesday, and you'd get 100 applicants in, and then they'd go through like 2 or 3 interviews in the morning. You had like an X Factor cut off at 12, and then you know, half of them left. Then you go through some other sort of interviews in the afternoon, but at the end of the day, with 100 candidates, you could hire like 15 people, for instance.
The ones with the best sob stories.
The one with the best sob stories, the ones with the best salespeople, and they'd gone through this highly intense process, but it was so time efficient. Because if you're hiring that many people quickly, the issue you've got is all your managers become tied up. People just become recruiters essentially, and when they're supposed to be actually executing on the business, they're actually just hiring people the whole time. So if you can do it in a time sensitive, you know, in one day, but make it work, then you end up. So if you do 2 super sessions a month, you're hiring 30 people a month type thing. So that's how we did it. And it was quite there's quite mythology behind it, but it actually meant that it was very efficient. So that's how we did it.
And when you brought them on that quickly, presumably there was a sort of a rote learning process or formula that they would
then we had an induction process, and they had training, and then they were released onto the market to go get great deals.
It's like Stratton Oakmont.
Yes, exactly. Although we were incredibly fair about that, but it was and then you were monitoring all activity through Salesforce, from meetings to conversion, and the team back in London were deal quality team, were assessing all the quality of the deal. So you had it was quite intense.
What an experience.
Yeah, it was good fun. And even actually, because I recruited probably in that period of time, I probably recruited about 650 salespeople overall, because obviously they don't all stick around. But it's good, because for Wagestream, the 5 I liked are now working for Wagestream, which is good news.
God, it really is like Simon Cowell, isn't it? The fame factory. Why not pick your brains about this now? What do you think makes those 5 better than the rest?
Oh, I think they've all gone on to get enterprise experience. I mean, we're selling into corporates now. It's a different model than convincing McDonald's to do a half price Big Mac.
Okay.
But it's tenacity and hard work is the rule of sales. If obviously your personality helps and getting in the door, but if you are hardworking and persistent, that's 60% of the characters you want in a salesperson, because that ultimately sales isn't easy, and you just can't give up. You've got to keep figuring out and being creative, but essentially being very resilient in terms of how you actually get through a day to get to people.
Amazing. And then your story continues after this. It doesn't stop there before Wagestream.
Yeah, what did I do after? So after that, I went on to join YPlan.
Yep.
Because they were, so YPlan was, it was an entertainment app in the day. What LivingSocial and Groupon had just not understood mobile at all. It was very web-based, email-driven marketing platform. And it was just the emerging days it was the first apps were emerging, and YPlan, just when I first looked at it, I thought, wow, these guys are like years ahead of everyone else. The interface, the UI, the whole concept just massively appealed to me. Essentially we were serving up entertainment content. So what are you doing tonight type thing, turn on the app, and then you could pick something to do. Ticket was issued through app, you go there and you do that. But I guess the story, the end story behind that was great model, great business, but it taught me a lot about mobile product and apps, as in, unless you can give someone satisfaction in literally 3 seconds, you're out of business with apps. Uber does that very effectively. Turn on app, I want a taxi. If I can't, they knew from the beginning, if they couldn't get you a taxi within 4 minutes, the difference between them being able to do that and not was a 50x difference in revenue in towns where they could get you a taxi in 4 minutes and not.
Wow.
So even now, when you go on Uber, you'll note this, that every taxi is always 4 minutes, and then maybe it goes up to 8 minutes, right? But they know if they say it's 8 minutes when you go on there,
and then you yell at the driver. I can't believe it.
You'll go to my taxi. You'll go to some other service, or you'll go and get a Santander bike. But we can talk about that another time. I still owe TfL £600 for the ones I lost yesterday. But that utility function in an app is so important. You get it with Spotify. Know if they can't deliver that song for you in I think it's 1.3 seconds, whatever, they struggle.
Wow.
So they look at these types of metrics. So the deliverable behind the product needs to be give people satisfaction. For whatever reason, humans lose all patience when they on their mobile phones. So I will never do another app that hasn't got utility function in there. Because if you're not on the 12 apps on their home screen, you're out of business. You're out of business. You just can't. Your product will never. And you're only on there because you have a function that people use daily. We always say toothbrush. Your toothbrush app, but do people use you twice daily? Because if they do, like a train line, like a city mapper, then you're in business.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. We raised money for a company that was doing what Uber did, loosely speaking. They had a different model on it, but they couldn't ensure the supply. And I guess that's where Uber's probably really got their surge pricing right, to make sure that supply ends up in the right places to ensure the 4 minutes are catered for.
But presumably they had a problem really early when there just weren't enough drivers to make that.
But I guess the competition at that point in time was mini cabs and black cabs.
Which are everywhere.
Yeah, so they'd put smart people in a town and say, okay, you're running Chicago, you need to get as many drivers as possible so that we can get cabs to people in 4 minutes. Because if you can't do that, we're out of business.
Yeah.
So the recruitment process, and the same with Deliveroo, that is the whole. A lot of the part of their business is based around how effectively they can recruit and retain in order there. Because if their supply fails, the whole model fails essentially.
It's very high pressure. Because I remember I went to Miami and Lyft were there, but they were giving away rides so cheaply to compete with Uber that they must have just been blowing marketing spend completely.
Yeah, but it's just user acquisition they put it down to, so it doesn't appear it's something else on their balance sheet. But actually, this is so Uber, the only company that we know of, the only corporate that's actually put in that built their own flexible pay model, because they realised if they can't pay drivers at the end of a day, they're going to lose drivers. So they now make sure that the payment they have is a daily payment for drivers, and it's something Deliveroo is also looking at. Because if if I'm a rider and I come out of a lecture at LSE or whatever, and I want to do a couple of rides for Deliveroo, I don't want to be paid in 3 days for that. I want to go out tonight, so I want to get paid tonight. So creating that link between work and financial reward, the tighter that link, the more motivation there is for someone doing more drives or more rides or whatever else. I mean, in this weather, Deliveroo, everyone stays in and wants a burger, but the riders don't want to ride in this weather. So how do you supply and demand? It's a fundamental.
How do they do that?
Exactly. I mean, they just have to encourage through payment or incentive to get more riders on the streets, because no one wants to ride a bike at this point.
And you say that Uber have built that. They've built their own. I mean, they've got 4,000 engineers. They can pretty much build anything. But they've built their payment structures that drivers are paid daily. There's quite high costs you can imagine to drive all day, right, from an insurance to a fuel to everything. So they absolutely realised early on that actually creating a daily payment model would allow them the drivers would benefit massively, and they'd get more drivers, they'd retain more drivers. So absolutely, they built their own. Yeah. But the technology that we like Wagestream, which is the ability for anyone to access their earnings in real time. It's not. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say it's hugely complicated, but yeah, it's still something that you wouldn't get. Most corporates just wouldn't build it. Like, they wouldn't build their own HR system or their own payroll. They always outsource that type of service. Well, let's talk about Wagestream.
Haven't we got a Guinness World Record to tackle?
I think we should tackle the Guinness World Record.
All right. Okay.
I'm kidding. No, Guinness World Record. Very quickly, I hit most cricket balls consecutively in under a minute. And I've also realised with Guinness World Records, we have, so our captain of our cricket club's a great guy. He decided that we were going to break like 5 records, and it turns out with Guinness, if you set it all up, you can break it. There's all these random records out there that anyone can break, but no one actually does the time and effort to put it together. So another one we broke was longest run up. So he had his brother run 5 kilometres from the other village. So we all sat on the cricket pitch. You had to sit. They had 2 proper umpires. Had someone from Guinness looking, and then everyone was in their kit waiting on the cricket field in full whites, waiting for this guy to run about half an hour mark. Came onto the pitch, threw the ball, and if it was a wide or a no ball, back you go, son. So anyway, he threw the ball. It was a good, and that was another record. So it was a great day.
And did you have to play the whole game? Make it official?
You had to make it all official. There's some harsh rules to Guinness. They don't mess around. And we were trying to think, okay, what's the next one we could break? And we were trying to I think it was the highest cricket ball, but we couldn't figure out how to get a drone up high enough to do it, and then drones in Gatwick, and we just decided it wasn't worth it. So we broke a couple of records that day. But yeah, I would advise anyone, if you've got the time in your life, do go and break some records, because Guinness, as long as you set it up with Guinness, you can either pay for someone to be there, or as long as you give them enough notice, they'll say, okay, we approve this day, and you've got to film it and send it all back. But at the end of the day, it's not as hard as it may look at.
Who selected you at the cricket club to hit the most consecutive balls?
Well, just total luck.
Right.
I think, I don't know why I was selected. I don't know, because I was probably the worst person to actually do that. And I think we tried it a couple of times and it didn't work. And I thought, if this next one doesn't work, I'm out. I'm definitely going to be out. So I think it was just blind luck.
How many was it?
It was about 24.
And somebody bowling at you, or
no? It's like, so you got like guys just bowling at you. If you miss one, that's it.
Right.
Wow. So it's real teamwork. You have to have the bowler.
Yeah.
And has that helped?
If someone bowls it wrong, it's a wide. That's you're out. You got to start
so
again.
It's 4 overs of.
Yeah, it was just like just a line of people throwing shit at you.
And has that subsequently helped you?
Massively.
Not being good at hitting cricket balls. I mean, in terms of just people reaching out to you, creating natural interest.
No, I put it on. Of course, I put it on LinkedIn straight away because it was a very important part of my career that I make sure everyone understands that. No, I don't think it's a bit of fun really.
Yeah.
But it's always a good talking point.
Oh, we're talking
as you can tell, I hate talking about it. And I never want to mention it.
The worst. That's a great record.
Let's never speak of it again.
I want to do one.
Potentially, you may have also got the most runs in 1 minute as well if you hit all of them.
Actually, that's a good point. I should email them again. Hey, there's 2 records.
Just saying.
Guinness World Records holder. I think we'll be changing that.
Would you have another crack at that record? Do you think you could beat it?
I think it could be done. I think if anyone else did it, they'd probably beat it.
I was going to say I quite fancy having at this record.
If anyone with 2 legs and 2 arms actually took it on, they'd probably beat it. Let's be fair.
Okay, I'm.
But for now, for this year, it's mine.
I'm heavily satiated with that answer, Ollie.
Okay, let's segue with very few scenes in place to Wagestream, because that's sort of what you're here to talk about.
Absolutely, yeah. So Wagestream is, and just for the Wagestream allows any worker with a shift worker salary to have access to their earnings in real time, with the whole pretext of, if you can give someone access to their earnings, then they don't have to, within pay cycle, go into sort of overdraft or incur overdraft fees, credit card debt, or the worst case in our world was payday loan. You don't have to take a payday loan if you can actually access your earnings. So we set up the whole store to say, look, we're going to kill off payday loans. So, even when Wonga went under, which was a great day for us, we did a mock funeral procession across Bridge, which was all good fun.
Was that last year?
Yeah, got on the front of the Guardian Times, so it was quite good fun. But we were absolutely, and then, when we looked at this sort of disrupting pay, it was something that was emerging out the US, and Walmart had put together 2 companies in the US, which is like November 17, to figure out if flexible pay would drive better rates of retention and productivity with their staff. So me and my co-founder Portman looked at this and thought, wow, what a great idea. And then looked at, realised in the UK that 85% of people are paid monthly, whereas in the US, whether you're CEO of Walt Disney or work in McDonald's, you are paid every 2 weeks. There would be a riot if they paid monthly. So then we looked at the financial stress over here and in Europe is far greater. Like payday loans are more prolific. Barclays and Lloyds charged more in overdraft fees last year than the entire US banking infrastructure of 3,200 banks. So lower income workers are just unduly punished by having to wait a month.
Where does the month come from? Is that a cash flow thing for companies?
Yeah, absolutely right. So this is what we thought. What the hell's going on? Because in the old days, days work, days pay, good old days. Obviously, even I can't remember those. But it's absolutely that. Employers in the UK have stretched out paydays as long as possible before there's a riot, which turns out it's about 30 days. For 2 simple reasons. The first one is they can retain the cash, good thing. And also, actually running payroll is very admin intensive and costly. So every time you run payroll, you pay, right? Yeah. The company is a cost on the company. So the less times they have to do that, the better off they are. And they've just got away with it. That you've got, there's still some companies that will pay weekly, but the market's all moved to monthly now. And that, whilst that benefits the employer, has absolutely zero benefit to an employee. And trying to get if you're a lower income worker, trying to expect them to budget effectively for 30 days, it's a pipe dream, it's a nonsense. So then you realise that actually in the system, and then financial stress isn't linear stress, it goes up exponentially at the end of the month, and that's when the Wongas of this world will, they're 5x their marketing spend in the last week of a month because they know they get better conversion. It's just a horrible business. I'd love to, really put a stab into anyone that's putting workforces into debt, whether it's Wongas or Salary Finance of the world. How can we stop that happening? Now, some debt's good, like mortgages, people need, debt exists and it's not always bad, but you are unduly punished with a monthly pay cycle. And if we can give people access to their earnings so they can pull some of their earnings and not have to get into a cycle of debt caused by a payday loan, then everyone's going to be better off.
What were the typical interest rates for Wonga?
Well, it went into thousands. To give you an idea, if the average payday loan isn't the average payday loan is about 260 quid, and if you take a payday loan, you will be paying back that as well as about 180 quid, if that makes any sense.
Yikes!
So you're actually taking out well over 400. That's the problem. And if you're a lower income worker, and because we're really sort of trying to help them more than anyone else, is you get into these cycles of debt. So you take out a loan because your boiler breaks down or your car breaks down or something. There's something you have to do, like an unplanned expense, and then you get into these cycles of debt. You just can't get out of. No one could get out of 1,000% ARR system. It's just not so. And that's how they profit. It's just, I don't know, regulation and is starting to move a bit now in terms of ending it, but it is a horrible business, and there's a huge amount of people operating in that space, and they should all be put out of business. And if we can help put people out of business, all the better. We know from just our research, we've got about almost sort of 50,000 people now on the Wagestream platform that have signed. So we know 38% of them have used Wagestream instead of taking a loan, and that's, for us, is great. So we think that's a real win.
You told a story, which to me on the train, which I'd like you to tell again.
I remember reading a story, I want to say last year. It was about this young guy who was 19 years of age, and he was a delivery driver.
City Sprint driver,
the City Sprint driver who ended up, but long and short of it is he ended up hanging himself because he couldn't get out of the Payday loan problem that he landed himself in. I can't remember whether he got ill or his bike broke, but it took him off work and he had to take a loan, and then it ended up
to buy the bike back,
or to buy a new bike or fix it, and then it ended up that he was just servicing the loan interest basically, and he couldn't get himself back on his feet, and then he hung himself.
Yeah, no, it's horrible. Yeah, I mean, obviously, his mom has been trying to change. So yeah, no, he got some parking tickets,
right,
and then he couldn't afford to pay them. And they got worse. Then he took out a loan, like you rightly said. That's an exact example of someone getting into a cycle of debt. And it is very, very stressful for someone if they can't understand a way to get out of that, and they've got no ability to get out of that. Yeah, and he committed suicide. It's a really sad story. We've actually, City Sprint have signed with Wagestream as well, so I'm hoping, when they roll that out, I think it will really benefit drivers and anyone on shift work, because that is the worst example. That's the worst type of thing that can happen with financial stress. Is that story? Yeah.
As you say, it becomes inescapable, and for most people, I don't think they're having a conversation beforehand about the consequences of what they're getting into. It's a short-term solution. It is really strange that our paycheck is so intimately linked to the calendar month.
Yeah, it's bizarre that everyone has different paydays. I mean, you'll have lunar cycles, you'll have last Fridays, you'll have last days, you'll have Hackney Council just launched Wagestream today. They pay on the 15th of every month, 2 weeks in arrears, 2 weeks in advance. It's just all these bizarre things. We can't really work it out. We think your payday is dictated by when you're incorporated, and people just go, okay, we'll pay a month after we were incorporated. That whenever that falls, will be your payday. But it is, if you look at like just corporates, one of the last inflexible bastions sat there is pay cycle, right? It's totally inflexible, and there's no benefit to the employee for having that inflexibility. And actually, the benefits we're seeing of being flexible are huge, which is really interesting. But yeah, us and others, because there'll be many other companies trying to operate a similar model, are disrupting that and crushing a pay cycle. Because why should an employer hold on to your money that you've earned for a month while you are, in some cases, going into horrible financial strife? And then you realise that actually none of us at school got taught about budgeting or financial education. It's not a subject. So expecting people to go into a job on a monthly pay cycle and be masters of budgetary is just a complete joke. So how can we help people visibly and through open banking data and through Wagestream app to help them financially budget in a better way?
And you're a B2B product, so you're selling into companies.
Right.
What's the pitch there?
Yeah, so we're absolutely... so we see it as we are linking the two most important institutions in an employee's life, financial ones, which is their bank and their employer. So we'll go and sell into like a David Lloyd gyms, and they will roll our app out to their employee base. And there's three big reasons that they're going to do that. The first one is we say, if you give people this financial freedom, like this financial cushion that they can rely on in a given month, you'll retain more staff. And in hospitality, retail businesses that churn through, in some cases, 100% their staff every 12 months, retention's massive for them and a huge cost saving. Even a 10% increase saves them, a big restaurant chain.
And it's money that just goes to recruiters.
Exactly right. And then the second one, though, and I think this will be the legacy of any company or this whole flexible pay model for any company that does it, is the productivity gain that we didn't realise at the beginning, but we're seeing now, which is unbelievable. Which is, if my son goes and cuts a neighbour's lawn and gets £10, there's a tangible link there between work and reward.
Yeah.
And when you go and get a proper job and grow up, you get to these monthly pay cycles, you lose that link. But with Wagestream, we're giving that link back, and it just means people do more shifts. So we're seeing like shift workers doing 25% more shifts if they're enrolled in Wagestream. Because if you think about it, it makes total sense. If I work, for instance, at a pizza restaurant today, I'm a waiter, I get tips. I won't see my tips now till the 28th of February. And that's just a millennium away from millennial worker sort of thing. But if I could get them straight away, then I may go, actually, I'll do another shift tomorrow. I want to do something on Sunday, or something same. So they end up just, when you create that link, people just end up being more productive. We had a security company up north called Key Security that he was quite clever. He just used Wagestream because he couldn't fill all his overtime shifts because security is a 24-hour business. And he said to his staff, look, if you do an overtime shift, you get 100% of that money through Wagestream straight after the shift finishes. It's all biometric. So as soon as they put their fingerprint in, shift finish, they get access to that money. And he's now in a situation where he says, this is unbelievable. All of my overtime shifts are full for the next 3 months. People are calling me up for more overtime. It's completely changed the behaviour of his employees. And that, I think, is something that now we're seeing it in the data is once proved, why wouldn't you have this for your employees?
Yeah.
And the last thing is recruitment. Like if you put on a job ad, you pay daily, or you've got flexible income, you get 100% increase in job applicants. I mean, think about it, if I'm a barista and I could work at Costa, Starbucks or Nero's, and one of them pays daily, guess where I'm going?
Yeah.
So it's that. So there's some massive benefits for the employee to have this in terms of financial health, financial stress, but to reduce that. But there's huge benefits for the employer, and those models tend to work really well. But you still, our big issue in life is, well, how can we sign up more? Right, because you're still in a B2B enterprise sales cycle.
Yeah.
So it is, that's still anyone in fintech or any startup that is in an enterprise sales cycle. Your outstanding question at the end of every day is, how can we make this move faster? Because we move quick, but TFL doesn't.
Yeah.
So how do you create the your brand, but also internally, how do you make them move? Because they can move quick, but you've just got to come up with some ways to do it. We actually found that charging, so every time someone makes a Wagestream withdrawal, they're charged £1.75. It's like an ATM charge, and that the model initially was there was no charge to the employer. But we figured out something that is really interesting, that if you can give stuff away to consumers all day for free, they lap it up. But if you give it to enterprise, they don't know what to do with free, and you're actually better off charging them, because not least have we got more leverage in the contract negotiation, i.e. we'll give you 20% off if you sign in February. There's leverage. More importantly, once they've signed, if they're not paying, the CFO will be like, let's roll that out in May. No problem. If they're paying, the CFO's like, I want that in tomorrow.
Right.
So by charging, you actually shorten the sales cycle, you create more value for the enterprise. It's just one of those weird nuances of enterprise sales. I'm sure someone will write a book about it one day, not me, but someone will.
So the model is a license fee to the company and a transaction fee?
Yeah, so they're paying us a monthly SaaS fee based on a number of employees, typically about 50p per employee. So if you're a 3,000 person organisation, you're paying about 1,500 quid, so it's not onerous. And then every time an employee does a withdrawal, we charge £1.75 to the employee.
To the employee.
Yeah, so you're essentially, and that covers our costs of faster payment, the ledgers we set up, and all the banking infrastructure behind. Plus the big thing here, which I never mentioned it early on, but is we facilitate all those payments. So if that David Lloyd employee takes £100, we Wagestream have paid for that.
So you're taking the risk.
You're correct. So we've got a banking facility of 25 mil that allows us to do that. So and your original question about cash flow, that means it doesn't impact the company's cash flows. I think if it did, I think we'd have I think the company would have a much bigger issue and objection to actually putting this in place. So that's a big thing. But I think over time at scale, we'll look to reduce that to as little as possible. We also know now if someone uses it more than 10 times a month, which we have seen, we don't charge them anymore. And we've also got some employers now actually saying, hey, we'll take care of the first 2 withdrawals a month for our staff. So we're getting that, because our world is now, we actually believe that the enterprise, the corporate, should pay something for the financial health of their staff. So let's try and push all the costs to them. If they're really seeing this productivity retention benefit, then they will pay for their staff to have better financial health, because it has material gain for them.
Yeah.
So I think over time we'd like to see no charge to employee, but more charge to employer. But that's just something that has to evolve over time.
Well, they're spending a lot of money already on B2B wellness and mental health as well, which is now somebody's got into a situation where they're potentially compromised, or it is preventative. But I do think a pillar of that is the respect shown between the employer and the employee, and again, somebody's financial health, especially in London where it's very expensive to live, is key.
Yeah,
so there's sense of well-being and feeling good about yourself as well. So take the month of Christmas. If I was being paid on a 2-week cycle, I think December the 1st through to 14th, I might ring fence as present buying money. And then the 14 days after that, I may say, well, I'm not going to go and spend as much. I've hit my limit now. Whereas if you get your salary for a month, you max out for Christmas presents, and then you're struggling for the sort of next 2 weeks to go.
And January's the most horrible, because everyone normally gets paid before Christmas, and then you've got this 6-week horrible period where there's amazing sunny weather and just a horrible time where you don't get paid for a while. So, and generally people overspend in
a lot of payday loans taken out over the Christmas period?
Absolutely.
Is that one of the key?
Yeah. January is the key month for the Wongas of this world, because this is where, in any month of the year, this is where most financial stress is felt most keenly in January, because, again, it's all down to the fact that you've got a 6-week pay cycle in some cases, because employers like to pay people before Christmas. That's a nice thing to do, but then they don't bring forward January payday, so you've got this period where it's actually quite hard. But it's interesting because we very much focused on lower income shift workers, because we just felt that was a natural market fit for this. But we get a lot of employers now, like salaried employers using Wagestream as well, that aren't shift workers at all. But there's still, financial health is an issue for many, many people.
But you're basically taking care of their employee satisfaction by taking the risk on fronting the cash. That's the same. Do you just invoice them at the end of the month for the amount?
So we've got quite clever. So when you enrol in Wagestream, we swap your sort code and account number in payroll file to a Wagestream ledger account. So your net pay goes through our account.
Okay.
But it means we can make an automatic deduction in a millisecond. So. And it also means we're not linked to payroll, because if you know anything about payroll, it's like nothing in payroll has changed since payroll. And payroll people tend to be genetically modified not to change anything. So if any startup or company is trying to do something with payroll, it's incredibly difficult. I mean, we know big retail. There was a big retailer we talked to the other day, haven't changed their payroll system for 13 years. It's like, it works, don't touch it, because the worst that can happen to payroll is people don't get paid, right? That's the worst possible thing. So if it works, it's a very slow moving industry. So we don't actually touch the payroll process, we just do that account swap. And it means that Wagestream is active as a tool, as a platform from the 1st to the 31st of every month. And because the last week before payday is the most stressful, and if we were linked to payroll, the payroll typically cuts off 7 days before people actually get paid. We wouldn't be able to operate in that last window, which is actually the most critical window to operate in. So I think anyone like doing a flexible pay model is making sure your product works every day.
Is there a flip side to this, where when a user, an employee, has more access, or basically infinite access to their pay, that they then spend more irresponsibly?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So the overriding objection when we started from employers was, wait a minute, this is too powerful. All my employees are going to go down the pub or gamble all this away. And we're like, okay, that's a very paternal attitude from employers. But it actually, nevertheless, was the objection. It turns out the polar opposite's the case. If you give someone back their financial freedom, they actually act a lot more responsibly, and we're seeing that in increased shifts, a better understanding of where they sit in the month. But we've also got provisions in the product, so the employer sets the percentage they're allowed to take out. It's typically about 40% of your earnings. Right. They're also set, if they want, the amount of times people can use it and the monetary amount they can use each time. So we have those controls in there. We've also got self-controls in the app, so people can also have their own settings, because we have had people ring us up and go, I can't, like, this is too entitled, I can't. So you have to make sure you're being responsible. I think with open banking coming in, we'll be able to create this like financial Fitbit, which says, hey, we know you overspent, because we can read your bank account, £300 more than you should in Christmas. We've taken the liberty of booking 5 more shifts for you, because we can see your rota, because we're connected to everyone's workforce management system. Why, if you say yes to that, you'll be in the black at the end of the month, not in the red. So you create this type of real-time financial health check that no one has access to right now, but would be really, really helpful to someone. Because what mainly happens, like, people get paid, half of it goes on direct debits, then they feel flush for a couple of days, and then the debt cycle begins, right? And then bills come in, they put them under the carpet. We're saying, no, look, let's deal with them. You've got a bill to pay on the 23rd of the month. Let's take some of your earnings and take care of that. You go into overdraft on 10 days before payday every month. We can see that from open banking. Let's take some of your earnings and stop you paying £8 a day. Yeah. So you can actually start to try and get people in a better system, because anyone that's incredibly wealthy that I ever speak to, they always tell me the the thing they never remember making that extra 10 million, but they always remember when they no longer had debt.
Yeah.
Now, I'm unfortunately not in that situation. I've got horrible debt all over the place. But I guess you must feel so much better just from being alive to have no debt. So I don't think people really, and I didn't understand before we started Wagestream, the burden that debt puts on people. So as wherever possible, we're going to try and get people in a better situation. Because I think having no debt must be a better world.
So is that the difference between financial wellness, as you've called it, and affluence?
Yeah, I absolutely. I think that, not carrying around debt and feeling, you just makes, everything in your life can become better. I think it's very much linked to financial health and mental health have a real link. Physical health, if you are in real financial strife, it's probably your relationships suffer, absenteeism at work goes up. It's just not nice. So, and we see, and the extreme example of that City Sprint driver is the horrible extremes of that. But yeah, I think if we can put people in a better financial health and at least make it visible to people so they can make better decisions, that's going to be great.
I think there's something very negative about spending more than you earn, which is probably something that we've got into the West with sort of credit-driven systems. But there was a piece by James Altucher on Quora, and he said he's been a rich man, he's been a poor man, but the happiest he's been is when he was earning more than he was spending. He said there was times where he had millions, but he'd also be spending an absolute fortune. But he felt shit about himself because the cycle was going down, and you just have this intense feeling of negativity that your life is eroding from underneath you, simply because your cost control is bad. And months where I cap my spend and feel good about that, it's generally a bit of a positive cascade.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And circling back a bit, so when you had the realisation that this was a big issue with your co-founder Portman, how did you then go and actually execute it?
So we looked. We thought this is we immediately understood how this could benefit. But Portman is from the Valley. He's now relocated his whole family over here. He actually did it in summer. He thought, wow, this is just like California. This place, it's amazing. Now he doesn't think that, but he's too late. He's moved over. But he's got a great philosophy around product build. So we got to market really quickly with our sort of MVP. And obviously that over time that's just we've got it's got stronger and stronger as a product, but we just knew like what we have to do. The first thing you have to do is just get people using it. So classic startup story, we signed the pizza restaurant below our office, right, because we bought 40 pizzas from them on Friday and they signed up, and there's only about 40 staff there, but just getting it into market was the main thing. So we did that, started evolving the product, and then now it's just a question of how many more people can we get to use this, and so we're just going through a system of trying to sign as many people as possible. And then as we've learned from our users and from the businesses that are now our clients, we've built more products. So now we've got like SaveStream, which means you can initiate a sidecar savings account within the app, and then some of your earnings every month can go into that. So and that's visible. And if I want to go on holiday, I've got a holiday goal or whatever by July, how much do I need? Let's make that happen for you. Because actually, 55% of UK families can't afford a £250 unplanned expense. That's how bad things are out there. So getting them in a situation where they can is going to be a better world. So having access to someone's pay means you can do a huge amount of good things for them financially. So we're just trying to figure out what else we can do.
Well, and part of that story, you got the backing of some enviable backers, I believe.
We did through Village in the US. We were Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos. When you're starting up, the one issue you've got with any business is you're not credible, right? You've got no credibility.
Well, you do. We've been through your stories. Cricket
maybe
balls.
A little bit. Well, obviously with the Guinness World Record, it's a completely different world. But you've got no credibility. So I think having them come in really early was a great credibility check for us, and actually employers like that as well as we've lucky enough to have Ascension Ventures with like Joseph Rowntree, Big Society Capital, social impact charities that also have been very helpful to us. Their whole remit in life is to reduce the poverty premium, which is the extra amount a lower income worker will pay, whether it's electricity, whether it's phone charges, whether it's insurance because they live in a certain area, but especially when it comes to debt. No one wants to take out 1,000% ARR loan, but sometimes low income workers are forced to do that. So we report back to them every quarter on how we've reduced poverty cycle, but their backing as well has been very helpful with our mission. And when you're trying to sign up employers, they like that social impact piece.
And what was the pitch into Village, or who accessed?
So we were lucky. So we our principal backers QED, they're the Capital One founding team. So they've been really helpful, not least from allowing us access to a lot of banking infrastructure, but also connection. So they introduced us to Village, and Ross there, the partner we love him. He came in and said, "Look, I love this model. My LPs will love this. Let's do it." So they came in early doors. Yeah, and they're still a strong backer of ours.
So it wasn't you replying to Bill Gates' email?
No, I was going to one day I'll remind him of that, and I'm sure he'll remember. I'm sure he'll remember that guy.
Eerily enough, I think he probably will.
Yeah,
I kind of feel like he's that.
They'll probably levy a huge fine on me for using brand without permission. So I think I'll let that one lie.
He's very proud of poverty alleviation. I think he was at the Global Goals event recently and saying that 135,000 people a day were being deemed to be pulled out of poverty. So I think it's high on his agenda.
No, it's massively high on his agenda, and he does, and that's why this type of business that we're doing is right up there with what he wants to do from a social impact type of thing.
Is there any competition?
There is, yeah. I think there's a lot of there's incumbents now that are pivoting to do this. But there's also I think we know there's another 6 companies getting funded right now. So this whole. And that's great, right? Because actually, it depends which way you look at it. Yes, competition, bad or good. But if there's multiple companies doing this, it just helps the space. I think there's enough. There's certainly 3 or 4 businesses of merit now which have just had seriously big fundraising rounds of 100 million plus, that they've made the space, that it's validated the space, right? So we know this is going to be a thing. We know, like streaming music or film, in 5 years' time, it will be odd if you can't just stream your income when you want. Paydays will be gone. The only question is who's going to be the market leader, and that's what obviously we're trying to achieve. But yeah, there's multiple companies coming, and there's a couple of others operating already, and everyone's got slightly different ways of looking at it, different tech. But at the end of the day, this is going to be a thing.
Do you think you can have adaptive switching? So if my next month is coming up and I'm looking bad within your app, and Netflix, Spotify, and all these other things are going to come up, will we have a situation in the future where now you have sort of these Monzos that bucket your spend, that it can pull back on spend on my subscription payments that I don't need, cancel them on my behalf, saying that you really don't need to spend this, you potentially really don't need to spend this money this month because it's going to be a little hard up, and it can start to identify and react in that way?
Yeah, no, I think there's all that's coming, right? So and I think what we like is normal PFMs or someone like a Monzo, the categorization is getting smarter and smarter. So you're really trying to make it visible to someone what your spend is. What I really like about Wagestream is we can make a tangible link, not just with what you spend, but what you can do about that.
Yeah.
Because there's no point telling me, hey, look, in fact, you go to Pret too often. I know that, but am I going to change my routine, right? Unfortunately not, because I'm probably going to go to Pret after this and eat a big something or other, right? But at the end of the day, if you can say, this is what you spend, but if you did this would happen, and you can do that within app, I think that's amazing. And that's, I think, the difference we've got.
Well, because credit lending can become quite interesting. At the moment, you get lent a sum of money, but potentially it could be you're lent a sum of money that cannot be spent in buckets 1, 2, 3, clothing, entertainment. It's for your groceries. It's literally so you can feed yourself. This is why you're being extended this line of credit, potentially at a lower percentage repayment. If somebody wants to go and take on money and then spend it on shopping, that's probably their prerogative, but I don't think that's the healthiest way. But people should be able to feed themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that whole open banking affordability piece will be one of the big gains for consumers, because certainly lower income workers are unfairly treated when it comes to mortgages or loans or interest charges. But if you are a worker and you have an income, why is that? So by exposing that data to banks, they'll be able to make better decisions. Because right now, having just gone through a process of getting another mortgage on a house, it's so archaic how they understand your affordability. It's ridiculous. So if you actually had access to a lot better data, and there's startups trying to do this now, that's going to be a better world for everyone, I think. Because you actually be able to make your risk profile is going to go down considerably if someone has actually, you've been employed for 6 years, you've always, your spend's fine, that's rather than, you're a lower income worker, we're not giving you any money.
We're going to have an AI version of our mothers,
yes,
sitting in whatever smart device we're using in 10 years, saying, "Are you really going to buy that
video game?"
Extra,
is what she would have said to you when you were a kid.
Honestly,
extra ripe avocado. Get the one and let it mature.
That may be a good way to kill off all apps, but
we're going to sort of do some future gazing, I believe. Am I right? Because we like to sort of then take this through line and extend your worldview into stuff that sort of predicts the future. So do you think there are dynamic ways in which remuneration for employees can be factored in? So Perkbox being an example where they're starting to add in different ways of thinking about appeasing your employee.
Yeah. I mean, I think in terms of what? Just in terms of can that be integrated into HR platforms?
Just more roundedness to it, whether it's tackling the individual and saying, what do you need? What can we support?
Right, I get you. So this is something that is in our minds as opposed to in reality, but with open banking, we'll be able to, if a Wagestream user, because we're linked to the employer, if a Wagestream user initiates open banking, we can read their account, aggregated, we can send that data back to an employer. So we could say, for instance, to an employer like McDonald's, hey, here's the financial health of your organisation. Did you realise that 10% of your workforce can't afford a £100 unplanned expense? All the way through to, hey, did you realise you give half-price cinema tickets as an employee benefit? None of your staff go to cinema, they'll go to Nando's. Do you want to give them a Nando's voucher? So you'll be able to give, on an aggregated basis, what we call KYE, like know your employee, the financial health and the spend patterns of your staff, and that should make the employer much better at designing benefits packages that have value to employees, as opposed to the generic, hey, discount coupon here or cycle to work scheme there. That data could be used to really help the employer go, wait, we actually, if we gave them this, everyone would be much happier. Well, that's a better world.
Are you close to a situation where you can attribute the financial wellness of the employees within the company to the company's productivity?
Yeah,
you can say,
yeah, we are. So we're lucky enough to we've got a partnership with Forth, who do like timekeeping and payroll for sort of Carluccio's, Pizza Express, Burger King. They're quite dominant in hospitality.
Yeah.
But because of that partnership, they've got 10 years worth of data with most major hospitality companies in the UK. So they're rolling Wagestream out to their client base with great effect. So we're able to see, on an individual worker basis, if you are enrolled in Wagestream, are you being more productive than the ones that aren't, based on not just today but 10 years worth of data? We're seeing 25% increase in people's productivity. It's insane, to the point where people don't actually believe us when we say that. So I think we need 3 or 4 more companies. We want to see that and publish a case study on that, and then I think that's the point where this market tips and everyone goes, we have to have this, because if you can get more, if you have 10,000 plus employees and they're 25% more productive, is a huge gain for you as a business, especially in light of Brexit and transient workforces and less people being available. These things matter.
Well, dare I say, the next question. The next question.
Oh, no,
I wasn't going to ask that, actually.
No. You weren't?
I wasn't going to ask it.
Let's
not have a Brexit question.
Yeah, let's not have a Brexit question. Because actually, what you've beautifully identified, which is something I'm a massive champion for, is put the power in the hands of individual people. They can manage their own lives with better health, well-being, and that is enough to drive and make serious changes for all involved. I mean, as you say, 25% productivity for a company is massive.
Huge, yeah.
Is financial wellness like the biggest part in your view of employee motivation? Because I learned a bit of GCSE business studies recently, and there's
I also did that course.
Yes, there's two models that they talk about. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Herzberg's hygiene factors, and I can't remember the difference between the two, but they sort of rank in order of importance which aspects of people's lives is the most important for motivating them.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I'm glad that GCSE course delivered value. So we actually, I love Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So at the bottom being food and shelter, right? So when I was at Y-Plan, there's no point selling an Adele ticket to someone that can't pay their rent, right? There's a disconnect there. So anyone doing any social media company like the Facebooks of the world will very much focus on the egotistical side of that hierarchy. But if your base level needs aren't fulfilled, you're never going to move up. We've actually done a Maslow's hierarchy of employee benefits, which was great for us, but probably boring for everyone else. But at the end of the day, pay is absolutely a fundamental pay and job security and a place of work are all in the bottom rung.
Because they're like the pillars that everything else is
exactly
built on,
right. Yeah. Half-price cinema tickets, cycle to work schemes and tax credits are right up at the top. So if you are delivering benefit to your staff that you want them to have a material impact on their life, then go for the bottom ones, because that's where the real value is. And a lot of employer platforms or benefits platforms only focus on the top, and there is no massive benefit there. You're not going to retain more staff because you've given them half-price Odeon tickets.
Yeah.
But if you have a flexible pay model, like Uber is seeing, because that's why they did it, for instance, there's a massive retention gain, because those are fundamental in people's lives. So do I think financial wellness is right up there as one of the most important parts of it? Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm. My whole company's based on that. So
but would it be a nice model for WeWork to take on board on behalf of the companies?
Adam Newman should absolutely take Wagestream on. They do everything possible for staff, and Wagestream should be one of them. So that's it.
Because there's a lot of emphasis around the design and architecture of your space.
Yeah,
as I'm sure you've seen in Founders Factory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that people have breakout pods and all this, and it seems like it's almost forming like adult playgrounds.
Definitely.
But it does slightly veneer the actual reality behind it, which is that you take home a paycheck. And
no, absolutely, no. WeWork should absolutely do flexible pay. They should stop giving out free biscuits. That's bad for me. But keep the beer. Do flexible pay. Would be awesome. Yeah.
How are we doing for time?
We're in good health.
How are you doing for time?
Good health.
Yes. Good.
Actually, there's a topic for you. Do you think that the way we work in general is going to change? Is it going to be more people living remotely, working remotely, coming and working, co-working spaces like WeWork and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think for instance, okay, we're a startup. Am I going to sign a 5-year lease with a big London landlord? No chance. I have no idea how many staff I'm going to be in 12 months' time. Whatever I've projected will not be true. So flexibility in many parts of the workplace is definitely, that is massively important. I still haven't figured out what's more effective than having everyone in the same room, though, I must say. From a startup point of view, trying to get things done for decision making, of course we use Slack, of course we use WhatsApp, but having everyone in the same room is still fundamentally gets things done faster. If I could figure out how everyone could be remote and be as effective, I'd be on that all day.